Um, so I'm in immigration court and I have a master hearing coming up, and I'd like to know what a master hearing is.
Yeah. So there are two types of hearings in immigration court. There's something called a master hearing and then an individual hearing. And the first hearing you will go to is always going to be a master hearing. And there'll be one or more master hearings. And the master hearing is intended for to get preliminary issues taken care of before the individual hearing. Now, the first thing people always ask is are they going to ask me questions in the master hearing? And usually they don't ask many questions. The judge doesn't ask many questions. They want to know, first of all, if you're planning on defending yourself in court, are you going to stay and you want to stay in the United States? And if so, how you plan on staying in the United States, what application you want to file for yourself. And so the judge is going to ask you that. And the judge is going to want to know if you have an attorney. If you do have an attorney, then your attorney will actually be answering all these questions for you. And they'll also want to know things like, they'll do things like deadlines. They'll schedule your individual hearing, which the individual hearing is where they ask you all your questions. But it's preliminary questions like, where do you live? Who's in your family? Who's going to be part of this case? Who are the witnesses? Witnesses being people who are going to testify in the court. And if you're ready to go forward means like, do you have all your evidence? And again, if you have an attorney, your attorney can answer all these questions. If you don't have an attorney, that's the master hearing is also when you ask the judge if you can have more time to try to find an attorney. And hopefully you haven't done that too many times because you can't keep asking in master hearings forever. So normally, the first time you go, if you ask time for an attorney, they'll let you give you time for an attorney. Depends on their own schedules. Will indicate how long you will get. So sometimes they'll give you 2 weeks. Sometimes they'll give you 2 months. Sometimes they'll give you a year. It just depends on what court you're in and what the judge's schedule is like. And then the following time, you should go back with an attorney who can then help you out with the exact same questions that may come up with the next hearing.
So will the judge be understanding if money is tight and I can't afford an attorney yet? Will the judge be understanding?
The judge may be understanding. It just depends on the personality of the judge and if you've done this before, if you've done it before many times. So in immigration court, the government does not provide money for your defense and they don't provide an attorney. So you have to find one. And so that's the responsibility of everyone. And while a lot of judges may be sympathetic, they can't let the case go on forever until you find an attorney. So they will eventually, every one of them will eventually set a hearing date so that you can bring an attorney or not. And at the end of the day, if you don't have an attorney, the judge can still go forward with your case and you'll just have to basically act as your own attorney in that case.
Okay. And can there be multiple individual hearings?
There can be. So an individual hearing, in an ideal world, it just takes a single day or a single afternoon or morning. Usually for a time slot is scheduled for an individual hearing, maybe 2 hours, 4 hours. And if the case cannot be completed during that time, they can have you come back for another one where they can ask you more questions. So it's never a given that a case will take a specific amount of time because it depends basically on three different parties. So you have your case that you're presenting with your attorney, but then you have a judge who may have his own questions to ask and who may want you to come back in at a future time with more evidence or something like that. And you also have the government, the Department of Homeland Security. They provide an attorney as well that challenges everything that you are saying or presenting. And so if they find that you're not presenting enough evidence, or if they have lots of questions for you that can't be answered in that time slot, then you may very well come back. And there's no limit on the number of or individual hearings. I've seen them. Sometimes they take 4 or 5 or more hearings for people who have particularly complex cases, or there's just a lot to them.